So today I actually partnered with the folks at Dubsado to share how to use their program as a wedding planner. Now, if you're thinking about using Dubsado, if you're currently using Dubsado, definitely check out this tutorial. Hi, I'm Jody Ann Rowe. I'm the founder of the Event Certificate, and I work with event planners and wedding planners to help them turn clicks into clients. That's right, I'm all about your digital marketing strategy. Now, I started my business from the couch in my condo, and I moved from making nothing to working on 5 and 6 figure events, and I want to help you do the same. Now, today I'm doing something a little bit different because I'm actually looking more on the business tools, your operation, and the workflow, right? So I'm all about creating efficiency in your business. So even though I focus on digital marketing, if your business is not efficient, if you're not running like a well-oiled machine, then you're gonna have less time to find clients. So it's important that you set up these processes so that you can automate at least a lot of the back and forth that you'll have with clients. So that's what we're gonna be doing with Dubsado today. So I'll stop talking and throw it over to them because they've shared an amazing tutorial highlighting some of the key features that you actually need to pay attention to. So get ready.
Hi everyone, hope you guys are having a great work week. My name is Joey and I work in the sales department here at Debsado. And before I go ahead and jump in, I just wanted to express some thanks to Jody Ann for reaching out and honestly just giving us the opportunity. This is awesome for us and we love doing these. So I understand that everyone here is a wedding planner. And we're lucky enough to have a lot of people that work in and out of the wedding industry. I really and truly hope that there's something here for you. What I'm going to kind of speak on today are sort of tips and tricks and how to use certain functions and features in Dubsado, specifically as a wedding planner, and perhaps focus on some of the more important things that will help you just kind of manage your day-to-day life and hopefully make things a bit easier. I do want to emphasize also there's no right or wrong way to use this. So whatever it is that I mentioned today, I do want to, I guess, stress, if that makes sense, that if you have other, let's say, colleagues in the industry that use a CRM or perhaps even Dubsado, don't be too stressed about using it in any one particular way. For every single business owner, there is a sweet balance to kind of find that will not only save you the most amount of time, but also will make it as easy to manage as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I promise I'll try not to be too long, but thank you again to Jody Ann for the opportunity. We really do appreciate it. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Cool. Yeah, so what you guys are all seeing now is our Debsado dashboard. And if you're wondering, by the way, what is Debsado? What can I do within the program and why would I perhaps need it as a business owner, specifically in the wedding industry, is it is sort of a client management software. If I was to kind of lump Dubsado sort of into 3 big functions. The first is client management. So especially if your clients book your time months or perhaps even over a year in advance, the ability to have like a solidified client folder where you can monitor and access and store all your client data just for kind of ease of use or visibility. The second are what we call deliverables. So this is pretty much anything at all that you send to your clients often. It could be check-ins, reminder emails, any types of documents or contracts to either sign or fill out, as well as invoicing. So those are things that I'll talk about. And then lastly, automation. You know, if there are certain touch points, for example, that you would like to automate leading up to the day of a wedding for your client, those are things that you can think of if you have a bit of a routine that you currently follow. Perhaps there's a good amount of that we can put into autopilot essentially, just so you can focus on the more important aspects of your job and your business without sweating things like follow-up emails and such. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and talk about all those things in the context specifically of wedding planners. And just to get the ball rolling, I did want to show everyone, whenever you're actually putting a client in the software, they are all considered projects. As a project, there's always going to be 2 default categories. So what you're all seeing now is what we call our project dashboard, and this is what will house all of your projects, if you will. And there are two kinds. There are lead projects, which in this context are prospective clients, perhaps brides and grooms that are interested in your services, but they have yet to actually book you. They're just kind of browsing, or they're interested, but they haven't made any kind of progress to convert into a paid client. And then, of course, the other category are your job projects. So these are people who have booked you full on out. Whatever that happens to mean, whether it's a deposit made or a contract signed or perhaps both, the actual conversion itself does not matter as much as it does just knowing that leads and jobs are two kinds of a project. So if not for anything else, if you're taking a look at this page for the very first time, you'll always be able to just kind of scroll through your list, or you can actually search someone's name or family name or perhaps business name at the very top search bar. But I'd actually like to offer a couple other ways that you can just organize and manage your client load. And one of them, although it doesn't necessarily sound that sophisticated, is something called tags. And tags are kind of like labels or identifiers. So if you yourself have any kind of traits or characteristics that are really important to just kind of keep track of or log in any meaningful way, this is something that you can use, so you can apply these tags, multiple of them, to all of your projects and use this as a way to filter and navigate based on your criteria. So let's say you offer a mixed bag or different levels of wedding planning services. This is something that you can think about to implement and use tags for different ones, or perhaps you have different types or demographics of clients that you would also like to keep in mind. Essentially, using those tags, you can press this filter button and filter based on your own personal criteria. So that's just another layer of context that if you wanted to look at the big picture and just kind of weed out clients that you don't want to focus on just yet, tags are a great way to do that. So admittedly, the most of the time you'll spend in the system is within the project itself, so I want to make sure I dig into that a little more heavily in just a bit. But I wanted to show everyone some of the templates that you'd be able to use as a wedding planner. I would probably say that the form templates, more than anything, are the most commonly used. I'll dig into each one as needed, but I do want to stress that they're all cloud-based. So very similar to like a Dropbox scenario or perhaps Google Drive. This is something that you can access, especially if you're on the go, all you have is your phone. You don't need to worry that any of these documents are saved to a hard drive of sorts. You can pull it up on whatever device. But more than anything else, something that's really important to us is customization. So if your business, whether you're a brand new business owner or you've been in business for years or decades and what have you, the idea is we want to make sure that we provide you with a platform that can accurately translate your branding and make sure that anything at all that touches your client's inbox is perfectly representing you as a company and as a person. So just as an example, like the way that you might be able to design these types of documents are inclusive of high resolution images, videos if necessary, of course any types of fonts or logos or branding. I do want to stress, by the way, we don't do any co-branding, so luckily if you send something to somebody, it's not going to say like such and such wedding planning brought to you by Dubsado or anything like that. So first and foremost, I have an example of a contract. And basically, this is what a form would look like while you are in what we would call edit mode. So whenever you're building a contract, for example, from scratch or just any form, we have these table of elements, as we call it, that what you do is it's very much like building a website on Squarespace. You would drag and drop the elements just based on what your preference or need might be. So let's say, for example, all you're doing is you're recreating your existing contract. What you'd have, you'd have some basic logo or header at the very top. You'd have like all your terms and conditions. And then, of course, at the very bottom, you have a signature field intended for the client. So I do want to stress, if you're using something at the moment that's like Panda Docs or HelloSign or DocuSign, this would essentially completely replace that. It is electronically compliant, and as soon as you send this to a client, whether it's just the bride or just the groom or both parties needing to sign, they can do so fully electronically without having to worry about printing or scanning or anything like that. So do know it is completely globally and electronically compliant. If, by the way, you have a preference for countersigning for whatever reason, whether it's accountability or otherwise, what happens is you'll actually get notified, and I'll show you all a live example of this. When someone signs the contract, you'll get notified on your dashboard and you'll get an email. At that point, when you tap open the actual contract and you countersign it, that itself will actually update the client's version automatically. So I do want you to know you don't have to go ahead and resend a revised version of the contract. It'll just update any kind of document like that for your client, so you're always on the same page. Now, if you're wondering, by the way, do I need to countersign? Is it mandatory or anything like that? It is 100% up to your discretion. I do want to stress it is not in any way required for you to countersign. It is legally binding for as long as you maintain one client signature. And before I actually dig into any of the rest of the forms that you may be able to use as a wedding planner, I want to stress that let's say you have some of these documents already. Let's say you've used either PDFs or Word documents or Google Docs, or perhaps you've used like a third-party form builder. If any of the forms that I briefly mentioned today are something that you have at the moment, we offer a free service where if you create a trial account, we'll actually just recreate them for you to save you that step and to save you some time and some legwork. So if you love building and creating and putting things together, of course you can do it on your own. But I do want you to know if you wanted to save the hassle, that is a free service that we offer just to make sure that the setup of it all isn't too cumbersome. With that said, if you have a bit of a process involved with getting to know your clients, whether it's a phone call you might take, a screen share meeting, an in-person meeting, or what I'm sort of referencing, a form, we actually have something called a questionnaire. And I do want to stress there's no right or wrong way to use this. Pretty much any time in your process when you engage with a client and you understand their needs and their wants and their preferences, you can use something like a questionnaire for just gathering very specific details. So I'd imagine when someone's first reaching out, you'll have them at least say, okay, their first name, last name, email, perhaps when is your wedding date type scenario. However, as you're digging deeper into who they are and figuring out how you can best serve them, this is something that you can manually or automatically have sent over to them just to kind of gather more either background info or perhaps just trying to get details on what their vision might be for planning their wedding. So the example I have here is a little bit left of center. It's actually for a floral designer for weddings, but I do think that some of these answers and questions still apply. I want to stress that you can be very particular about it. So do know, in addition to sort of branding it and making it look as good as you'd like it to be, you can be particular about the questions themselves. So you can kind of indicate, which questions are required, which ones are optional, are there any kind of check boxes or yes or no's or long or short form answers. You can very much control all of that. And another thing that I'd like to mention, especially if you're gathering a ton of details, as there is typically when planning something like that, two things. Your clients can save their progress. So let's say that bride and groom need a little bit of time to kind of discuss their preferences and they need to, let's say, sleep on it. They can 100% save, let's say, half of their answers as a draft and sleep on it and then come back to it whenever they're ready to go ahead and proceed. Another thing, it's not obviously mandatory, but if you find it to be useful, we actually have something here called a file uploader. And this is intended for your clients. If you need any kind of, I don't entirely know if this is relevant, but if there's any kind of inspo for them to give to you, Pinterest boards, seating charts, any types of documents or spreadsheets and things of the sort, they can actually use that. So alongside the questions that they're answering, they can also attach any relevant information. So you'll kind of kill two birds in one stone, if that makes sense. You'll get some good stuff, some good attachments alongside those questions they answer. So do know, again, you can use this as a bit of an in-depth intake form, whether you're just kind of weeding out the clients who you might think are a little bit more serious than others, so you know which one to proceed with or what have you. Or a lot of people like to use this, let's say, post-wedding when they just want to gather some feedback. Maybe you want to put some cool testimonials on your website or share some feedback you've gotten from a previous client. You can absolutely use this as a way to do that as well. So one other form that I'd like to mention is something called a proposal. I guess, like in the most concrete sense, a proposal is almost like an order sheet or a shopping cart. So I understand that everyone's services are sort of packaged differently, if packaged at all. But if you are one of the businesses that, let's say, have structured pricing, so let's say, just to make things super simple, let's say I am a business of sorts and I have a gold, a silver, and a bronze package. Those are my base layer bulk service packages. But on top of that, let's say I have a ton of different a la carte items or let's say premium add-ons, if you will. I'd understand, there might be a lot of different a la carte items or additional services that you would like to upsell. So this is a great opportunity to have like a visual order sheet where your clients can essentially select and quantify whatever it is they're looking to purchase. And I know that quantity can sometimes be something that's pretty significant. So do know if there is a minimum or a maximum thresholds, whether it's tables or chairs or plates, whatever it might be, you can indicate that anything that they might select that has a number associated, you can indicate if there's a minimum or a maximum threshold of any kind. So the idea is, if you're wondering, okay, Joe, what does this do? Why is this beneficial? If your client, let's say they receive this proposal, you've already indicated you're available on their wedding date. If they receive it, they can go ahead and they can fill out, they can select and quantify what it is they'd like to purchase, and that itself will actually already create the invoice for you. Now, if you were looking to save a step and just be as efficient as possible, you wanted to make sure that you got all the important details up front, this is in no way mandatory, but I do want you to know you have the opportunity to connect the contract and the invoice to that proposal. So let's say, for example, you've gotten to know a client, they filled out your questionnaire, you seem like a great fit, and you just want them to proceed in the most frictionless way possible. At that point, they can go ahead and they can fill out your proposal, select everything and anything they would like. That itself will then transition and then require them to sign the contract. And then as a last step, in order to kind of secure your booking, pay some sort of deposit, or if you do require it, let's say the entire sum. And I'll get more into the deposit scenarios when I talk about invoicing. But do know, like, if you have a payment schedule of sorts, let's say it's they make like a booking deposit and then they pay like 6 months out and then they pay once a month, or let's say it's a more simplified like 50% down, 50% later type scenario. You can really kind of curtail that to help you determine what it is you might need from them. So they are very much aware of, in order to lock in your services, they're paying X amount of money and also signing this contract. By the way, I know that things are very nuanced. Not everything is super black and white, and you might need to kind of curate or edit your selection or pricing or anything like that. So do know that for any of these forms whatsoever, let's say I was to take my proposal and then I was to plop it into my project for John and Amy's wedding. At that point, if John and Amy, let's say they are a family friend, and I want to give them a bit of a discount, as soon as I plop it into their project, which I will show everyone, I can go ahead and, reduce the pricing to whatever I'm comfortable with, and just know that it will not in any way overwrite the master template. So any changes you make to someone's project or any forms within a project, you don't need to worry that you're then altering prices for any other client or for your master template as a whole. So hopefully, if this is something that you're hip to, this is something that can help you kind of gather all the upfront details and also maybe in a way provide a nice visual for your clients. Last but not least, we have something here called a lead capture form template. This is just a really funky way of saying contact page. In reality, you can use this in any which way. So if you have a website, or perhaps let's say you do or do not have a website, but the majority of your inquiries come from something like Instagram or Pinterest or Wedding Wire or Facebook or anything like that, the idea is we would actually replicate what this is supposed to look like as a website contact page. So if you do have one, you can actually replicate this in full and you can make it look exactly to the T what it looks like at the moment. So the idea is there's no visible difference on the client end, but on the back end of things, it'll do the diligence of taking all that info from the email that you receive and porting it into Dubsado automatically. So do know, instead of having to like open up the email, see you got a new lead, and then take all that and transcribe it yourself, it will do that for you. So that's the primary benefit, just sort of getting them in the door without having to hassle too much. And by the way, if you're wondering, like, oh, well, what if I don't have a website and I get most of my inquiries, let's say they're like referral emails or text messages, even, or Facebook messages or anything like that, there is also a direct link that you can customize to your business name and you can share it. So in any which way, you can put it on your Facebook contact info, you can put it on your Instagram bio, if you will. And also, even if you get like a random call or text message, another person that uses Dubsado in the wedding industry also recommended to actually just save that link to like the Notes app in your phone, if that makes sense. So even if you do get a text message from someone you do not at all recognize and they're inquiring, you can absolutely just say, thank you so much for your inquiry, copy and paste that link from your Notes app, and be on your way. Dubsado will take care of the rest, and it will put all their data into a nice project folder for you. By the way, if you have different calls to action, let's say on a website, you're not limited to only one type of contact page. So you can create all sorts of contact pages or calls to action, if you will. Just know that at the end of the day, if you create separate ones and someone fills it out, it'll do the thing and it will put it all in Dubsado for you. So at this point, if you're wondering, okay, once I have some of these templates set up, like the forms you mentioned, Joe, what would I do sort of on a daily basis? And this is where I want to show everyone what a project sample would look like. So this is a sample of a project page, and I hope this is clear. Okay, perfect. Basically, as soon as someone fills out that contact page, no matter which way they get it, there will always be a project folder that you will automatically be able to look toward. So even if to use my previous example, John and Amy had reached out, but you hadn't even spoken to them yet, you'll just kind of know that if you go into the project for John and Amy, you'll find everything that you'll ever need to reference over time. So a good way to illustrate that is your emails. I can imagine as a wedding planner, there's a lot of back and forth from the moment they might inquire up until the day of the wedding itself. So the purpose of connecting something like your email is just for visibility's sake. So whatever the host might be, we're not looking to replace it. So do know if you have something like Gmail or Outlook or Apple Mail or what have you, you can still perform all those same functions. You can send and receive as needed. But we wanted to just make things easy to look at. So instead of having to create a bunch of subfolders or dig through your inbox, especially from, let's say, months previous to wherever you're at in the process, everything's just in their project. So it's kind of like, okay, I need to talk to John and Amy, so let me just go to their project and I can immediately see the email correspondence between my business and this couple that I'm working with. I do want you to know, by the way, we're not rebranding your email, so it's not going to say like Cheryl at Dubsado mailer or anything like that. So I want you to know you can maintain your branding and have like those templates and your custom signatures and stuff like that. In a different way, whenever you're setting a document, however, this could be a worksheet, it could be a questionnaire, it could be a day of checklist, it could be anything like that that is intended for somebody to sign or fill out. What you would do is you would go to the Forms tab here in the same project view and then press this drop-down button to indicate which template you'd like to use. And at that point, you'll see each form you add. It won't send it automatically, but it will queue it up for you right here, and it kind of looks like a tile or a square. And essentially, let's say I have my wedding planning questionnaire. I'm going to need to gather a ton of details. If I wanted to just go ahead and send that automatically, I would scroll over that questionnaire and I would push that send button. That's where you'll see this email box, if you will. This is kind of a generic example, but imagine your branding added to it. So custom fonts and colors and signatures and things like that. But the only thing that your client is liable or responsible for is clicking on that button, and then it will take them to a new window in their browser. They'll go ahead and they'll fill it out and submit it when they're ready. I do want to note, by the way, if you do kind of any in-person sales or you have a very personal touch with your clients and you want to make sure you meet with them in person to get everything you might need, if you know you're going to see somebody but you also have some documents that you need them to fill out or sign, if you know that's going to happen, I do want you to know you don't have to send them via email these documents first. You can actually just have your phone or a tablet or let's say a laptop. So when you do meet with them, you can just pull up their project, open the documents, have them fill it out next to you, and you can do it that way. And then let's say it's a day of wedding checklist or anything like that. you can 100% print and download these items. So even though they're cloud-based, if you do need a physical or downloaded offline copy of any kind, that is 100% possible. So the next thing I want to note is invoicing. I realize this is a personal preference for every business owner, but I did just want to explain the different routes you might be able to take or the options that are available. Just to get it out of the way, we're actually integrated with Square, PayPal, and then my favorite, which is Stripe. So all three of those are your run-of-the-mill credit card processors, and they all have the same exact transaction fee of 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. To be clear, that's not something that we take. That's just and solely the transaction fee on behalf of the actual payment processor. So if you have any one of those or you're kind of exploring your options, anytime you have an invoice that's generated, whether you do it yourself or like I mentioned earlier, it's via a proposal they might have selected stuff on, at the very bottom is a Pay Now button where they can just pay in whichever way they would like to. If you are within the US, and I really do wish this was available in Canada and globally, Stripe is definitely beneficial for a couple of reasons, but the main one is they offer another form of online payment called e-checks. And e-checks are essentially another way of saying bank transfer or wire transfer, but it's done a bit differently. So let's say, for example, you're charging a sum of a few $1,000s, and in my opinion, 2.9% of a couple $1,000s is still a lot of money to eat as a transaction cost. So if that happened to be paid via e-check using Stripe, sorry, I'm going to eat my words here, the transaction cost on your end would actually only be 0.8% with a $5 cap. So do know, like, if you're charging anywhere in the 4 digits, especially towards the higher 4, maybe even 5-digit range, paying via e-check as a client will save you as the business owner, because even if it's a $6,000 sum, that itself is not going to equate to any more than $5 in the entire transaction fee. And the way they would do that, and this is really nice for wedding planners or people in the wedding industry in general, is you're not necessarily working with like a company of sorts where they have like an accounts payable department or an accounting department. These are families essentially. So the way they would pay via e-check is very similar to how they would log into their online bank account, or if you're familiar with something like Zelle, it's very, very similar. They would actually just either search for or select the bank that they are currently with, and they would use their online bank account login. So it's no different from logging into your mobile app or perhaps going on a website of sorts and logging in that way. So that is the payment route that they'd be able to take. That is pretty convenient for them, but also cost saving as a business owner, of course. Another thing I'd mention is I don't honestly fully know what's customary with regard to gratuity and tips, but you can absolutely just turn on gratuity for your clients. So when they are paying, let's say, that remaining balance, I promise it's in no way intrusive, but above the Pay Now button, there is a field for them to insert some sort of percentage gratuity or perhaps like a custom dollar amount. So I always say if you feel comfortable with it, or let's say if it's customary in the industry, I guess it doesn't hurt to turn it on and see what happens. I do want to also pose other scenarios. So let's say, for example, you have a client where they're very particular about paying a certain way, or let's say you have the father of the bride that does not want to pay online. They want to give you a physical check or wire you the money or give you cash in hand, pretty much anything that is not online and connected to Dubsado. The invoice itself, luckily, will still work pretty great as a balance statement. So at that point, let's say you send somebody a bill for $2,000 and then your client says, is it okay if I write you a cashier's or a personal check? Just let me know when you get it. As soon as the money clears, let me know. So let's say you go ahead and you do that and you deposit the check in your bank. As soon as you confirm that the money was received, all you have to do is hit apply payment and then specify the method, the amount, and the date that you received it. The biggest thing there is that the invoice, like the other documents, is completely live. So if you do want to give that last minute discount, if you have any unforeseen charges to accommodate that you did not see prior to, or like in this scenario, you're just putting the check in the system, you can absolutely do that manually, and everything that you change internally will reflect on your client's invoice. So all that to say, you don't need to send any revised copies of your invoices to your clients. That will always update for as long as they have access to the link. If you do have, by the way, a certain payment schedule that you'd like to follow, you can absolutely create a payment schedule template. So to use like one of the more simplified examples, if it's, let's say 50% of the total sum upon signing, and then the remaining 50 due, let's say 30 days prior to the wedding or event. That's 100% something that you can very concretely outline from the start. So if you actually apply that general template, you don't need to actually manipulate the dates for every client you use this with, because all it's saying is whatever you specify the wedding date is, let's say in this scenario it's April 5th, 2020. Let's say you've already paid the 50%. So if I need you to pay the remaining 50, all it's going to do is the system's going to say, okay, well, you specified the wedding date is on April 5th. So on March 5th, perhaps, is when the remaining balance is due, and they can actually see that pretty explicitly on the invoice itself. There are separate Pay Now buttons if there's something that needs to be paid. So yeah, another thing that I would note that I know wedding planners would really sort of like, or I'm hoping so, I don't want to make assumptions, is a client portal. The idea of a client portal is completely optional, but it's something that, especially if the duration of your time with a client is rather long, let's say in excess of 4, 5, 6 months, having a client portal is a nice way to just make sure your client is always seeing everything you need them to be accountable for. Especially if you don't want them to lose things in their inbox or something of the sort. I'm going to go ahead and show everyone an example of a client portal. So this is something that you can take advantage of, and each client that you're with will have their own login and password. The login email is just the one that is on file, and then the password is something that you can create for them. Perhaps it's their wedding day or something like that. So this is an example of a client portal, and you can customize this. So if you have like a really cool banner you want to add, or make sure it reflects your company colors or something of the sort. At a basic level, you've got some profile info on the right-hand tab. And this is basically any basic info. If they update their mailing address, if they update their email or anything like that, that will luckily update your internal file. The emails tab, I do want to be explicit. This is not something for your clients to necessarily send new correspondence with, but it's kind of a fail-safe for you. So if you're asking your clients to reference an email that you might have sent them months ago, this is a great resource for them to just look at and see, oh, okay, I can't find it in Gmail, but luckily I can see it right here. Here's everything we talked about. And then this projects tab, which you could actually rename this to your wedding or wedding or what have you. But this holds the most amount of data. Things like appointments, invoices, of course, contracts. And in the Documents tab, actually, I wanted to emphasize this is where any of the documents, it could be like questionnaires, proposals, what have you, this will all be here. But in addition to Dubsado forms, if there's any other miscellaneous document, like a PDF, for example, or something for read-only purposes, let's say it's a guide or a resource, go ahead and upload those here too. They don't need to be Dubsado documents, as well as any online links. So let's say you use a Google Drive, or you have some sort of online resource, a video, some tips, anything like that, you can save links as well to their client portal. So as soon as they log in, they know exactly where to find something if you ask them to go ahead and take a look at it. And then last but not least, the Home tab is very similar to that Projects tab, but it will exclusively show them everything that is specific to them. So they don't have to, they'll know pretty, they'll know up front, essentially, the things that they have yet to complete. This is, by the way, super overkill. This is just a lot of examples that I've accrued, but hopefully it's nowhere near this chaotic. I apologize. So if the client portal in some way is something that you feel will elevate your service or will provide some transparency and ease of communication with your client, you can 100% set that up. And if you have a website, or even if you put the link to it on, let's say, your Instagram profile, This is something that you can put the portal login wherever you'd like it to be. So even people that have perhaps worked with you in the past or someone that you're currently working with, anyone at all that has a portal login can just, let's say, go to your website and they can log in and see all their info. Last but not least, I wanted to mention calendaring and scheduling. So calendars, just in a very basic way, we have a Dubsado online calendar. So anything at all that has some sort of time frame or a date range will be automatically available here. And you are more than welcome to connect your personal or external professional calendar, whether it be Google or Apple or Outlook. I know I'm forgetting a few, but you get the idea. So yeah, you can connect the calendar. Let's say you're absolutely just comfortable with connecting or using your Google Cal, and you can just see things like that in both places with no hassle. Another thing I wanted to briefly mention is scheduling or appointments. So if you take like consultation calls, if you take in-person sessions, if you have any kind of need for booking an appointment with a client, this is something that you can offer to them. So it's not going to necessarily show them your external calendar, but it will provide them with a set of days and times that you are concretely available. And you can pre-format everything. You can kind of determine, how far in advance does someone need to book my time? Is it completely free, or am I asking to sign something or pay for a small fee or anything like that? But the idea is, once you hash out all those details, you can choose how you would like to share it. This is also something you can embed on your website, or perhaps if it's only for paid clients, you can do that pretty discreetly by just sending them the link. But this is what they will see. They'll see a list of days. They can go ahead and pick and choose a day and a time. And then based on the requisites that you might have for them, they'll just fill it all out. And then as soon as they submit it, they'll get that confirmation email, which will confirm the booking details as well as any other thing that they need to know. And they can add that to their calendar as well. The last thing that I wanted to mention is if any of you are interested in using Dubsado, we offer a free trial that is in no way time restricted. So instead of having like 15 or 30 days to figure it all out, you have full function as long as you might need to just kind of dig into Dubsado and see if it might be a fit for you as a wedding planner. In that capacity, I do want to note there's a lot of resources that are available to you. It's really kind of our biggest priority to to provide you with as much assistance as possible. So for example, if you're an early riser or a night owl, for example, you can actually chat with us. We have a bit of a swing shift and a night shift crew that works here in the office. So if you have any questions, you don't necessarily need to wait for daytime hours. Those forms, by the way, you can send all your forms. This is all while you're on trial as well, to forms, F-O-R-M-S, @dubsado.com. And we will create up to 10 of them for you, however long or cumbersome they might be, just to save you a little bit of time. And also free screen shares. Let's say there's something that is really kind of tying you up and you would prefer to speak with a human in person or virtually, of course. That's something that we provide that is completely free as well. So really, we just want you to know, as you're kind of digging into how you might use something like Dubsado, you don't ever, or you shouldn't ever need to feel like you're going at it alone. We really do want to make sure that we're giving you enough ammo to make your assessment of it, and then hopefully it will help in some way. So yeah, I really just wanted to express some gratitude again to Jody Ann for the opportunity. I hope this was beneficial, and if any of you have any questions about it, of course I'm sure you can contact Jody Ann in some capacity, or you can email me directly at joey@debsado.com, and I'd be happy to answer any sort of questions. We also have a free personal demo that you can book on our website. But in any case, I hope you all have a great week, most especially a great year, and thank you so much for the time. Bye, everyone.
Was that as good for you as it was for me? Guys, I want to really thank the folks at Dubsado for going ahead and showing you the tutorial. This is one I personally requested for you guys because I know it's one of the questions that I got a lot in the last couple of months. People were asking what was the best client management system, and I wanted to take you behind the scenes of a couple of them so you could see for yourself. Now, of course, if you have any questions, drop them in the comment below. I'm also going to be sharing a link to the Dubsado program where you can get a free trial as well as a discount if you decide to sign up. Thanks so much for watching, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Hit it right now. Just tap it like this. Have a good day, guys.